What's up you guys? So today I have an amazing DIY video for you. I have been obsessed with this vintage vessel train that has been happening both on the YouTube community and I feel like just in general in design. We are sort of getting back into this bohemian maximalist mindset where people have just turned into avid collectors of pottery and ceramics and things like that. I have been so on board and so obsessed with that trend. So today I have a much less expensive option for you guys. So let's jump right on in to the DIYs and show you how I did this. So for this first vase, I definitely went in with a rough grit sandpaper to start with, just to give it some grip and some added texture, so that when I went in with my bare hands and some spackling, it would have some grip and something to stick to. I do think this method was a little more time consuming, but all in all, I did like the finished texture. I think it gave it such a thick, handmade look, and that's really what I was going for. Definitely something that I would walk by at a flea market and go, ooh, someone made that. I want that in my house, in my collection. So while it was a little messy and a little more work with drying time and everything like that, I think it was well worth it. After perfecting the texture with my hands and the spackling, I made sure to let it dry completely before I went in with RUSTOLEUM flat black spray paint. That will be making many appearances in this video, so hopefully you have a can or two on hand of any flat black paint will do, but the spray paint definitely made things a lot easier. I do like the flat black on its own, however, I wanted to give it more of a dimension, so I did go in with this unnamed, unfortunately, I'm so sorry they didn't have a name printed on it, but it's just this little unnamed little jar of sample paint that I was able to snag from the hardware store for 50 cents. 50 cents, you guys. Go to your hardware store, check the clearance paints. I guarantee you will find some gems in there and they will be dirt cheap. I've got entire gallons for like less than $10 before, so keep an eye out for good paint colors in the discount paint section at any local hardware store you have. This particular color was a satin finish, sort of brownish black. It wasn't completely just black. There was a little bit of brown mixed in there, which I did like. I think it added a ton of visual interest to the finished piece, and I think it just looks stunning when it's completed. So I just took that and painted that sort of over the top, a little messily with a dry brush. I wanted to make sure some of the flat black came through, but also had that dimension to it. So for these next two vessels that you're going to be seeing, I did use the same medium to give them their texture, but two different methods to apply them. Now, I went in on all three of these with my bare hands. It was messy, but it was worth it. I feel like when I work with gloves, I can't work as well, and if I used a brush, it just wouldn't turn out the same way. For this, I used some basic white caulk. You can get this at any dollar store, any hardware store, places like Walmart, Target might even have it. Just a basic white caulking. Now I used this so that I wouldn't have to sand the surface of these two containers because they were a little bit more difficult shapes. Especially this trophy style vessel would be incredibly hard to sand and sand well, so I wanted something that would stick to this very slick ceramic material without flaking off or falling off, and caulk was perfect for this. So I would just take my caulking gun and pump some of the product onto the vessel and then go in with my hands to sort of spread it out and make sure that I was giving it the texture that I wanted. For this trophy style vase, I wanted a thicker texture, but also a smoother one than the last vessel that you saw me make. So I wanted to make sure that this one was a little bit smoother with some sort of handmade texture, but not quite as much. And I wanted to make sure I hit that sort of inner rim of the vessel as well, just to make sure that when you were looking at it like head on, or when you were looking from above it, you wouldn't just automatically see that slick, shiny burgundy color as well. I wanted that to sort of match the outside and make it look just that much more finished, if that makes sense. So this rounder vessel that you're seeing on screen here, this was so beautiful to start with. If it didn't have this like butterfly print on it, I would have 100% just kept it this color and texture that it was, because I loved the barely there ridges that were just formed into the ceramic of this piece. I thought it was stunning, but unfortunately I didn't really like the design that was on it. I did go in with a much thinner approach to this one, so I would squirt a tiny bit of caulk on there, and then as you can see, I'm trying to smooth it in sort of much thinner with my hands. I'm not going in with quite as much product. I'm trying to preserve as much of that natural texture that was in this vase as I can, just because I didn't want to lose it. This is where Rust-Oleum flat black paint is going to make another appearance in this video. I went ahead and I gave each piece 2 thin coats of paint just to make sure none of the white was peeking through. For this spray paint step, you want to spray it once, leave it for at least a couple hours, and then I would come back and flip the piece over onto its head so that I could see from underneath. Because of that added texture, you're going to want to give it another spray in sort of the opposite direction. So for this rounder piece, I wanted to give it a more Restoration Hardware vibe. So what I did was I took this, again, the sample paint that was on sale for 50 cents at my hardware store. It is called Wooden Cabin. It's by the brand BEHR. This color is stunning. I want everything to be this color. But I just took that on a makeup sponge and sort of stippled it on, focusing it first near where the handles were, and then sort of shearing the product out overall, the entire surface of the vase, just to give it sort of that vintage vessel look, sort of dirty it up a bit. I know some people will go in with like spices and like wet them and smear them on. I didn't do that this time, but stay tuned, that might come up. But I did like the look that this gave, and I didn't have to seal anything in. I didn't have to worry about anything crumbling off. So I did really enjoy that process. And then I went ahead with that same brownish blackish color and sort of stippled that on in between, just to again sort of blend that color out a little bit, as well as give just even more dimension and even more color to this vase and make sure that it just looked as authentic and as stunning as it possibly could. So I wanted each piece to have a distinct but cohesive look, and I think I was able to accomplish that using the methods that I've shown you in this video. And oh my gosh, look at how pretty these vessels look on my shelves. They are truly stunning. I love that they look like a set, but they don't look like a set. You know what I mean? Like, they look like they came from different places, but they all fit in so cohesively together. I have been obsessed with mixing my browns and my blacks, and I have just loved how these look with the rest of my sort of more brownish ceramics, and like my wooden tones and all of that, like some fresh greenery. I think these just stand out so beautifully against my white walls with my light wooden shelving. I think these look amazing with everything, and of course they are a neutral, so they will stand the test of time and be just a timeless house accessory for me to use. And of course, because of the materials that are covering the ceramic, it's sort of going to help protect the ceramics so they won't crack as easily as they would just in their natural state, which I do think is definitely a bonus to using this method. I think that's awesome. Anyways, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today and paint some vessels and sort of give them a fancy Restoration Hardware look. And I will see you guys in the next video. Stay well until then. Bye!